Welcome to Study Hall, and pull up a seat for our segment Art Explored.
Great to be here.
I'm really excited you're tuning in today.
Ever looked at a famous painting and thought, what's the big deal?
Happens to the best of us.
Well, you're exactly who we had in mind. Whether you know a Monet from a Manet or just enjoy a good story, you're in the right place. Today, we're taking a deep dive, a really good look at a painting that pretty much everyone recognizes. Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night.
Absolutely. It's one of those images that just sort of pops into your head, isn't it?
It really is.
That vibrant, swirling sky, you see it everywhere. It's almost become, a universal symbol.
You're not kidding. Mugs, posters, even those face masks everyone was wearing for a while. But we're not here to just admire a pretty picture. Our mission today is to get down to the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
We want to explore where this famous painting came from, what was going on in the world when Van Gogh painted it, and the truly fascinating story behind why it looks the way it does.
Yeah, there's a lot there. We're going to unpack that wild, swirling cosmos, take a peek at that quiet little village down below, and try to figure out what's up with that tall, flame-like tree.
And spoiler alert, it's not just a lovely landscape. As you said, there's a really powerful personal story woven into this canvas. This masterpiece was created by a deeply talented, but also very troubled artist during a time of immense inner struggle. And, well, he was actually living in a mental asylum when he painted it.
Okay, so let's get into it. Vincent van Gogh, born in the Netherlands way back in 1853.
Right.
By all accounts, he was a super sensitive and intense guy right from the get-go.
Seems that way.
But here's a curveball. He didn't actually decide to become an artist until his late 20s. That's kind of a late start, right?
It is, yeah.
You can imagine that might have created a sense of urgency, maybe even a bit of frustration to make up for lost time.
Definitely. He had a bit of a winding path early on, trying different things, working in an art gallery, teaching, even thinking about becoming a preacher. When he finally landed on art, it was with this incredible drive to express what was going on inside him. He felt like an outsider, like he didn't quite fit in. But he was determined to use painting to show the world what he felt. It became his lifeline, his way of making sense of things.
And it sounds like what was going on inside him was often pretty intense. His personal life seems to have been marked by a lot of sadness and loneliness,
Yeah.
Unreturned love, difficult relationships.
Yeah.
You can't imagine that it didn't have a huge impact on how he was feeling overall.
It absolutely did. He had his first really serious mental breakdown in his early 20s, and it seems he struggled with significant mood swings throughout his life. Some experts today think he might have had bipolar disorder, with those periods of intense creativity often followed by really dark lows.
Wow.
Then you add in the fact that he relied on his brother Theo for money. He was often poor and in bad health, and there's some suggestion that his use of absinthe might have made things worse. It paints a picture of a man under a lot of pressure.
Right. And then there's the really well-known story of the ear incident in Arles in 1888.
Yes, the ear incident.
After that intense and ultimately not so great period of living and working with the artist Gauguin, that led to him being hospitalized and then voluntarily admitting himself to the St. Paul de Moselle Asylum in May of 1889.
Now, here's something that might surprise you. These years he spent in the asylum, despite the ongoing mental breakdowns and hallucinations, were actually incredibly productive artistically.
Really? How so?
It was almost as if painting became a release for him, a way to channel all that inner turmoil onto the canvas. As he himself famously wrote, "I put my heart and soul into my work and have lost my mind in the process."
Wow. That's quite a quote.
It's heartbreakingly honest, isn't it?
It really is. And even though his life ended tragically just a little over a year after he painted The Starry Night, he died by suicide at only 37.
Such a young age.
His art, and this painting in particular, managed to transform that intense personal struggle into something so incredibly vibrant and enduring. It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
It truly is. To really understand The Starry Night, though, we need to zoom out a bit and think about the world Van Gogh was living in the late 19th century.
Okay.
It was a time called the fin de siècle, which literally means end of the century. Think of it as a period of big changes.
Right.
The Industrial Revolution was still going strong, creating a real contrast between city life and the countryside, and there were a lot of exciting and sometimes unsettling cultural shifts happening.
It was a time of artistic rebellion, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely.
You had these artists, the avant-garde,
Mhm.
which basically means the forward guard or the innovators really pushing back against the established art world, against the
Mhm.
traditional styles that were popular in the big art shows, the salons.
Exactly. They were saying, hey, art can be more than just pretty pictures of historical scenes or portraits of rich people. And out of this artistic ferment came post-impressionism, a movement with artists like Van Gogh, Gauguin, Cézanne, and Seurat.
Okay, post-impressionism.
Now, you might have heard of Impressionism, with artists like Monet painting light and fleeting moments. Post-Impressionists built on that, but they wanted to go deeper, focusing more on their emotions, using symbols, and experimenting with form in really new and daring ways.
Not just trying to capture a realistic impression of what they saw.
Precisely.
And Van Gogh was right in the middle of this revolutionary ferment, as one of our sources put it.
Mm.
He was in Paris for a while, soaking up these new ideas, and he was particularly influenced by artists like Gauguin and Émile Bernard, who encouraged him to use color in a really deliberate way,
Right, not just to copy
well,
nature.
but to express his feelings. So if he felt angry, maybe he'd use really harsh, clashing colors.
What's fascinating when you look at the Starry Night is how those bold colors, those really visible brushstrokes, and the somewhat distorted forms are a direct result of these radical artistic ideas.
Yeah, you can really see it.
They were all encouraging artists to break free from traditional realism and really paint from the heart to show their inner world on the canvas.
It's also important to remember that back then, people didn't really understand mental health the way we do today. Treatments were pretty basic,
Very rudimentary.
and there was a lot of stigma attached to it. Van Gogh's isolation in the asylum really highlights that.
Yeah,
It makes his incredible artistic output even more remarkable, doesn't it?
absolutely. His art was so ahead of its time, giving a visual language to these feelings that people didn't really talk about or understand.
Mm.
And on another level, the way people thought about religion and spirituality was also changing. Traditional religious authority was declining for many, but there was still this deep human need to find meaning in life.
Right.
And people often turned to nature and art for that.
And Van Gogh himself, even though his father was a pastor and he had these strong religious feelings early in life, by the time he painted the Starry Night, he wasn't really practicing traditional religion,
No, not in the conventional sense.
but he remained a deeply spiritual person. That quote of his really stands out.
Mm.
When I have a terrible need of, shall I say the word religion, I go out and paint the stars.
Powerful, isn't it?
That really tells you something, doesn't it?
It really does. He was finding his connection to something larger than himself through nature and through the act of creating art, rather than just through church doctrines.
Mm-hmm.
You can really see the Starry Night as a spiritual response to the modern age, a time of incredible scientific discoveries about the cosmos, yet still this deep human longing for something more, for transcendence and hope.
It's like the painting itself is a bridge. It takes this timeless image of a rural night that little village could be from almost any era
True.
and combines it with this incredibly bold and modern way of painting the sky.
Yeah.
It reflects both the scientific curiosity of the time with the identifiable constellation and the planet Venus and this really profound spiritual searching with the stars acting as these beacons of hope or eternity. What do you make of that blend?
I think that blend is exactly what makes it so compelling. It's both rooted in observation and reaching for something much bigger. So how did this specific masterpiece, The Starry Night, actually come to be?
Okay, yeah, let's get to the creation.
It was created in mid-1889 while Van Gogh was a patient at the Saint-Paul-de-Mazel Asylum in Saint-Remy, which is in the south of France.
He had just arrived there in May after those really difficult events in Arles. The asylum was this old monastery surrounded by walls and gardens.
Yeah.
He had a small bedroom on the second floor with a window facing east, and he also had a room on the ground floor that he used as a studio.
So he wasn't completely isolated.
No, he had space to work.
Hmm.
During the day when he was supervised, he would often paint the scenery around the asylum olive trees, those distinctive cypress trees, the distant mountains.
Mm-hmm.
But at night, he was confined to his room. And it was through that iron-barred window that he looked at the night sky and really conceived the idea for the Starry Night. There's a letter he wrote in early June of 1889 where he describes this view at dawn that just captivated him. He said, "This morning I saw the countryside from my window long before sunrise with nothing but the morning star, which looked very big."
Ah.
That morning star, which we now know was the planet Venus, Must have been quite a sight.
That single bright star against the pre-dawn sky clearly made a powerful impression. And he set out to capture not just what that sky looked like, but how it made him feel.
Right.
Over the next few days, he started working on this painting of a starry night sky. Because he couldn't paint outdoors at night at the asylum, he had to rely on his memory, his imagination, and perhaps some sketches he had done during the day.
So not directly from observation at night.
Not entirely, no. It's like trying to describe a dream. You remember the feeling more than the exact details.
And he finished it around June 18th, 1889, writing to his brother Theo that he had this new study of a starry sky.
Just a stuff.
It's kind of amazing to think that it was the only painting of a nighttime scene he did during his entire year at the asylum, out of about 150 paintings in total.
Wow, only one.
It really stands out as something special to him, even if he didn't realize it at the time.
It wasn't like he suddenly decided one night, hey, I'm going to paint the stars. He had been thinking about stars in the night sky for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Back in Arles in 1888, he painted Starry Night over the Rhone, and he even wrote to his sister saying that the night is more alive and more richly colored than the day. He was clearly fascinated by how to capture those nighttime effects.
And there's that other really thought-provoking quote where he compares painting stars to mapping cities. And he muses that just as we take a train to travel on Earth, we take death to reach a star.
Yeah, that's deep.
You can really see how he associated the night sky with these big ideas of dreams, infinity, and what happens after we die. So being somewhat isolated and having a lot of time for contemplation in the asylum, it makes sense that the stars became such a compelling subject for him.
Now, here's an interesting little twist. The view depicted in the Starry Night wasn't entirely what he saw from his window.
Oh.
Every morning before sunrise, he could see the eastern horizon, the wheat field, the rolling hills, the sky. He painted that view at different times of day quite a few times.
Okay.
But the village at the bottom of the Starry Night, that wasn't actually visible from his room.
Wait, really? That little town with its houses and that very distinctive church spire, that was something he added. That's kind of surprising.
Exactly. It was an imaginary addition, or perhaps a memory. Some art historians think it might be based on Sorami, the town near the asylum. Maybe he had sketched it from a hillside at some point. Others suggest it could even be a nostalgic memory of his Dutch homeland, because that church steeple looks more like the ones you'd see in Holland. What do you think about that? Why add something that wasn't really there?
That's a good question. Maybe by adding that peaceful, sleeping village, he was creating a sense of human connection, a sense of belonging that he might have been longing for in his isolation.
Could be.
It definitely grounds the painting, this idea of human life nestled beneath this grand, awe-inspiring sky.
And then there's that incredibly prominent cypress tree on the left side of the painting.
The big, dark one.
Those trees were definitely on the asylum grounds. He would have seen them every day. But its exaggerated size and the way it's placed in the composition, that was definitely his artistic choice.
Right.
He even admitted later that the painting was an exaggeration in terms of composition, this blending of things he actually saw and things he imagined or remembered.
So part real, part imagined.
It's like he's saying, this is how it felt, even if it wasn't exactly how it looked.
It's quite telling that when he actually finished The Starry Night, Van Gogh wasn't completely satisfied with it. He was pretty self-critical.
Yeah, he often was.
And initially called it a failure, just a night study that wasn't as important as some of his other work. Maybe that step away from pure observation, that imaginative leap, made him a little uneasy. He was usually so dedicated to painting directly from nature.
That's possible. But he did send it to Theo, so on some level, he must have felt it was worth sharing.
True.
And Theo's reaction, as we know, was rather lukewarm. So the Starry Night arrived in the world pretty quietly. Just another painting by a relatively unknown artist.
Wow.
Little did they know that those swirling stars he painted would become some of the most famous in art history, shining across the centuries.
Let's dig into the artistic influences that helped shape The Starry Night. Even though it's such a personal and unique work, it didn't just pop into existence out of nowhere.
Definitely not.
Van Gogh had absorbed a lot from the art world around him and synthesized it into his own very distinctive style.
Exactly. By 1889, he had been exposed to Impressionism, Neo-Impressionism, Japanese art, and he was constantly experimenting with new ways of seeing and painting. It all came together in this bold, post-impressionist style that was uniquely his own.
One of the big influences was definitely the bright color palette of the Impressionists. When he moved to Paris in 1886, he encountered artists like Monet, Pissarro, Degas, and Seurat,
Yeah.
who were all obsessed with capturing light and using vibrant colors.
Yeah.
Before Paris, his work was much darker and more somber,
Oh,
but
absolutely. Much more earthy tones. But in Paris, he really embraced luminous color and a looser way of applying paint.
yeah.
He even experimented with pointillism, that technique where you use tiny dots of pure color that blend together in the viewer's eye. Think of Seurat's famous painting, A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte.
Right, the one with all the dots.
Van Gogh didn't stick with pure pointillism for long, but he adapted it to his own style, using longer, more expressive strokes and unexpected combinations of color.
Okay.
And in the Starry Night, we see that brilliant use of complementary colors, those blues and oranges, yellows placed right next to each other to make each color seem even brighter and more intense. It's like they're vibrating against each other.
He really understood that to paint light, you need contrast. Those strong yellow orbs of the stars and moon practically pop off the canvas against the deep cobalt and ultramarine blue of the sky.
Yeah, they really do.
It's like he's saying, look how bright these lights are against the darkness.
And let's not forget the influence of Japanese art, specifically those ukiyo-e woodblock prints that were all the rage in Europe at the time.
Ah, yes, the Japanese prints.
You can see that influence in the bold composition of the Starry Night, the simplified forms, and even the sense of a flattened picture plane, where things don't recede into deep perspective the way they do in traditional Western art.
But perhaps the most recognizable element of the Starry Night style is that incredibly expressive brushwork, those thick, rhythmic strokes that seem to bring the whole scene to life.
Oh, absolutely. That's pure Van Gogh.
This was really his own innovation, though he might have been inspired by artists known for applying paint thickly, like Monticelli, or the dynamic lines of Delacroix.
Yeah.
What do you notice about those brushstrokes? What do they make you feel?
By 1889, he was really laying paint on incredibly thickly, a technique called impasto.
Impasto, right.
Sometimes squeezing the paint straight from the tube onto the canvas. In the Starry Night, it's so thick in places you can almost feel the texture.
Mm-hmm.
It creates this sculptural relief, catching the light and casting tiny shadows, which gives the painting this amazing, almost three-dimensional presence. It's not just a flat surface, it has a real physicality.
And that impasto wasn't just a random choice. It allowed him to physically shape the image with such energy. Look at the sky. Every stroke follows a curve, forming those great swirling patterns.
Yeah, you can trace them.
You could almost see the movement, feel his hand as he applied the paint. It was his way of conveying emotion, leaving the strokes separate instead of blending them smoothly.
It's like he wanted you to feel the energy of the night sky.
Exactly. He used what's called broken color, where he puts touches of light green, pure white, deep blue, and golden yellow right next to each other without blending them.
So your eye mixes them. Your eye then does the work of mixing those colors, creating this incredible vibrating surface. The sky really looks like it's in constant motion, alive with energy. Even in the halos around the stars, you see that subtle use of green. It's quite clever.
He was also influenced by his artist friends, Gauguin and Bernard. Gauguin was all about painting from imagination and using color in a symbolic way.
Right.
So a yellow sky might represent joy, for example. Bernard had a style with broad, flat areas of color and strong, dark outlines. You can see hints of both of those ideas in the Starry Night. It's partly his own personal vision, yet those bold forms almost take on a symbolic quality, don't they?
They do, but he never completely abandoned observing the real world. It's not pure fantasy.
Okay.
You can identify Venus, the crescent moon, and the general arrangement of some of the brighter stars, so it does correspond to that actual dawn in Provence. It's this fascinating balance between realism, what he actually saw, and abstraction, how he felt about what he saw.
That makes sense.
He's pushing color and form to convey his inner experience, but it's still rooted in the beauty of the natural world.
And ultimately, his style became so deeply connected to his emotional state. Those nervous, intense brushstrokes really do feel like an outward expression of his inner turmoil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people have even seen parallels between the swirling sky and visualizations of turbulent flow in physics.
That's a fascinating connection.
It's this really visceral, passionate way of painting, so different from someone like Seurat with his cool scientific approach. Van Gogh himself said he wanted his brushstrokes to express the vibrating quality of things. And in the Starry Night, everything seems to vibrate with feeling.
So Starry Night really is this amazing coming together of all these different influences, all filtered through his own unique way of seeing the world and his intense emotional experience.
Yeah.
He took what he learned from others and created something entirely new, something that would go on to inspire countless artists.
Let's take a closer look at the actual paint on the
Yeah.
canvas, the technique he used, and how that contributes to the power of the image.
The impasto is just so key, isn't
Yeah.
it? Those thick swirling strokes of that almost buttery yellow-white for the stars and moon, they literally stand up off the
Yeah.
canvas.
Oh, you want to reach out and touch them.
The moon, that yellow crescent with its halo, looks almost sculpted. You can practically touch it.
And the blues of the sky are mixed with whites and applied in these really strong, curling lines.
Mm.
If you could see the painting up close, you'd notice that uneven surface, those little peaks and valleys of dried paint that catch the light in such a dynamic way.
Right.
He clearly wanted that tactile, almost three-dimensional quality. He even compared the texture of his canvases to the surface of sculptures.
Wow.
In the Starry Night, it gives the sky this incredible sense of movement and energy, doesn't it?
And the way he used his brush is so varied and deliberate. Long, flowing curves for those big spirals, short, almost stippled dabs for the halos around the stars, those jagged, flame-like strokes for the cypress tree, and then these tiny little dabs of color for the village down below. It creates this rhythmic pattern that moves your eye across the whole canvas.
It really does feel like your eyes being guided through the scene, circling around the stars, following the flow of the wind in the sky, down the reaching cypress, and then settling on the quiet village.
Yeah, it guides you.
It's almost like visual music, as one of our sources describes it, with the different brushstrokes acting like different notes in a melody.
That's a great way to put it. And then there's that broken color technique we mentioned earlier. He doesn't blend the colors smoothly.
Right.
Instead, you have these unmixed strokes of different blues, greens, and yellows sitting right next to each other, and your eye does the work of blending them together.
Mm-hmm.
This creates that vibrant, shimmering effect that makes the sky seem so alive and full of light. Even in the halos around the stars, you can see these touches of unexpected colors, like that subtle green.
The power of the paint also comes through in the strong contrasts he uses. The painting is mostly cool in tone, dominated by those deep blues of the night.
Yes, very blue.
But then you have these bursts of warmth from those luminous yellow stars and that almost orange-yellow moon. That contrast is really striking. It makes those light elements really pop.
And the dark silhouette of the cypress tree and the deep blue-purple of the hills in the distance really set off the lighter sky, creating a sense of depth and drama.
Yeah.
He used those strong, dark shapes to ground the painting and provide a visual anchor.
And the village, painted in those more muted, earthy tones, with just these little hints of yellow light in the windows. It almost makes it recede into the background, ensuring that your eye is drawn back up to that vibrant and dynamic sky, which is clearly the main focus of the painting.
You can really sense his energetic handling of the paint. You can almost picture him in his asylum studio, squeezing out those generous amounts of paint and just attacking the canvas with these really fervent, passionate strokes.
Yeah, real intensity.
There's a real sense of immediacy.
Contemporaries actually did note that he painted quite quickly and with intense concentration. And in the Starry Night, you get that feeling of something captured in a moment, even though he did plan out aspects of the composition.
Right, it wasn't pure chaos.
It's this amazing combination of control and a kind of wild abandon that makes his technique so powerful and so recognizable.
It's like the paint itself becomes a way of expressing emotion. The texture almost engages your senses on a physical level. You can almost feel the cool night air and the distant glow of the stars. That's one of his great contributions, proving that paint on canvas can convey not just an image, but a whole sensory and emotional experience.
Ever since it was created, the Starry Night has been interpreted in so many different ways.
Oh, loads of ways.
It really seems to touch something deep inside people. And there's been a lot of speculation about what Van Gogh intended and what all the symbols might mean.
That's right. Is it a painting about hope or despair? Is it a depiction of the real night sky or more of a spiritual vision? It seems like it can be all of those things at once, and the meaning can even change depending on who is looking at it and what they bring to it.
One of the most common ways to understand it is as an emotional self-portrait. That turbulent, swirling sky is often seen as a reflection of his agitated mind.
Right, the inner turmoil.
Those spiraling clouds mirroring his inner turmoil. The sheer intensity of the sky dominating the canvas suggests that his inner emotions were so strong that they were almost overwhelming his perception of the outside world. What do you think about that idea? Does the sky look troubled to you?
It certainly looks energetic, maybe even agitated. And the contrast between that wild, energetic sky and the calm, quiet village below is often interpreted as representing that duality within Van Gogh himself,
Hmm.
that yearning for peace and stability alongside the storms of emotion and mental illness that he was constantly battling. Some have even described the sky as a nightmare made visible.
Well, strong words. Then there's the religious and spiritual symbolism. Even though he wasn't religious in a conventional sense, he was clearly a deeply spiritual person.
Absolutely.
Some people see the painting as conveying a sense of the divine presence in nature. Those 12 bright elements in the sky, 11 stars and the moon, have even led to biblical interpretations, like references to Joseph's dream in the Bible.
That's an interesting take.
And that church spire pointing upwards in the village, even though it's dwarfed by the vastness of the heavens and those cypress trees which have long been associated with death and eternal life, they all contribute to this spiritual reading.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have Van Gogh's own words about painting the stars as his form of religion and his idea of death as reaching a star. The cosmos itself becomes a symbol of infinity and perhaps even heaven. There's definitely a reverential feeling to the painting.
There is. Interestingly, some interpretations actually focus on the more scientific aspects. The fact that he accurately depicted Venus in certain constellations has been noted.
Right, we mentioned Venus earlier.
Some people even see the swirling patterns in the sky as possibly inspired by scientific illustrations of nebula that were becoming known at the time.
Ah, like early astronomy pictures.
Exactly. And more recently, physicists have even pointed out similarities between those swirling patterns and visualizations of turbulent flow and fluid dynamics.
That's why.
It's like art and science are having a conversation across the centuries.
And then you have that constant tension between hope and despair that seems to run through his life and his art.
Always there.
The dominance of the night sky, perhaps the symbolic weight of the cypress tree, could suggest a feeling of darkness or even a longing for death. But then you have that dazzling, vibrant sky, the glowing windows in the village suggesting life and connection, and Venus, the morning star, which is traditionally a symbol of hope and the dawn of a new day.
It's got both sides, hasn't it?
It's almost like the painting holds all these different possibilities at once. It's not just one thing.
Oh,
And when you look at the individual elements, the cosmic sky representing dreams and the infinite, the cypress as a possible link between Earth and the afterlife, the village as the human world and a longing for home, they all add layers of meaning. It's like a visual poem that you can read in many different...
and it's worth remembering that Van Gogh himself didn't really offer a definitive explanation of the Starry Night. He barely mentioned it in his letters,
Which is surprising.
which has really given us the freedom to interpret it in so many ways over the years. What stands out most to you when you think about these different interpretations?
I think it's amazing that a single painting can evoke so many different feelings and ideas. It speaks to the power of art to connect with us on a really deep level, almost beyond words.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the enduring beauty of it. It transcends its creator in some ways, becoming this universal visual poem that continues to resonate with us and spark new interpretations.
Let's dive a little deeper into some of those key symbolic elements. That cosmic sky, it really does take up most of the painting, doesn't it?
It really dominates.
That deep blue expanse just seems to pulse with light and energy. What do you make of that feeling of movement?
Those stars aren't just little pinpricks. They're these great luminous orbs surrounded by halos of light radiating a powerful energy.
Right.
It really evokes that sense of dreams, the divine, the infinite. Van Gogh was looking at a night sky relatively untouched by modern light pollution, the same sky that our ancestors gazed upon and found meaning in.
And the way he paints it, it becomes this swirling, almost living tapestry of energy. You can almost sense a divine presence in those great curving brushstrokes, like the breath of the universe. It definitely feels like a portal to something beyond our everyday experience, and that constant movement makes it feel like the universe itself is alive and dynamic.
Considering his thoughts about reaching a star through death, the cosmos here could certainly symbolize the afterlife, with those bright stars representing the destinations of the soul.
Oh, that's interesting.
They seem so close and yet so incredibly far away in the painting. It's at that paradox of vastness and nearness that makes you contemplate your place in the universe.
And even within all that apparent chaos and swirling movement, there's a sense of underlying order and pattern, isn't there?
Yes, definitely.
Those repeating spiral motifs, the almost harmonious arrangement of the stars. It can symbolize the idea that even in the midst of life's difficulties and apparent randomness, there's a deeper beauty or meaning to be found.
Then you have that very prominent cypress tree on the left side of the painting. It's so tall and dark, that flame-like shape reaching upwards.
Can't miss it.
In Mediterranean cultures, cypress trees have long been associated with mourning and death, often planted in cemeteries. Van Gogh himself even referred to them as having a funereal quality.
Right.
So, in the Starry Night, it can certainly be seen as a memento mori, a reminder of our own mortality, perhaps reflecting Van Gogh's own struggles with his health and mental well-being.
But then you notice how that dark silhouette of the cypress almost mirrors the shape of the church spire in the village below.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Both are pointing upwards, creating this visual link between the earthly and the celestial realms. It can be seen as a natural counterpart to the man-made church, both striving to reach something higher, something divine. What do you think about that visual connection?
Visually, it definitely grounds the painting, doesn't it? Without that strong vertical element on the left, our gaze might just drift off into the swirling sky.
True.
Its dark mass provides such a stark contrast to the bright heavens. Symbolically, it can represent human consciousness, perhaps even grief, anchoring this more ethereal scene to the earth. It almost feels like Van Gogh's own presence in the painting, rooted in the earth but yearning for the sky.
And then you have the village itself, nestled so quietly at the bottom of all that cosmic activity.
The calm part.
It really represents the human world, a sense of community, of home and security, in stark contrast to the dynamic and perhaps overwhelming power of the sky above.
It's depicted as so tranquil, almost asleep, seemingly unaware of the grand cosmic drama unfolding above it. It embodies that ordinary world, that sense of comfort and the mundane, set against the sublime and awe-inspiring. And that church spire, again, that symbol of traditional faith, seems almost small and insignificant when compared to the vastness of nature. What does that contrast suggest to you?
Maybe it's saying something about our place in the universe, how small we are in the grand scheme of things, but also how we still create these centers of community and faith.
Could be. And when you look at them all together, the cosmic sky, the cypress tree, the village, you really start to see a symbolic structure.
Yeah.
The human realm below, the divine or cosmic realm above, and the cypress acting as this kind of connector or bridge between the two. It almost becomes a spiritual landscape, doesn't it?
And the colors themselves contribute to the symbolism. The more muted, earthy tones of the village, the vibrant blues and golds of the sky, the deep green-black of the cypress. It all adds another layer of meaning. It really does feel like a visual meditation on life, death, and the afterlife, or on the relationship between humanity, nature, and something greater than ourselves.
You really can't look at the Starry Night without considering Van Gogh's mental state during the time he painted it.
No, it's central.
It was created while he was recovering in the asylum, so it's deeply connected to his psychological experience.
That turbulent sky so often feels like a direct visual representation of his agitated mind. And that contrast with the peaceful village below can be seen as the duality of chaos and order that he experienced within himself.
Absolutely.
It's like his mind, constantly oscillating between those states, left its imprint right there on the canvas.
And those swirling forms, some art historians even speculate that they could be linked to the hallucinations or a heightened sensory state that he experienced. It's as if he's expressing his inner reality, how he felt things, rather than just a literal depiction of what he saw. And the fact that he painted it during the day, relying on his memory and imagination, is also quite significant.
But it's crucial to remember that his mental illness didn't diminish his artistic control.
Not at all.
In fact, for Van Gogh, the act of painting often served as a form of therapy, a way to bring some order to his chaotic thoughts. He even famously called it a lightning conductor for his illness.
That's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
The Starry Night, for all its emotional intensity, was a carefully crafted work that gave him focus and purpose. It's quite poignant to think of him harnessing that powerful emotional energy and channeling it into such skilled artistic expression. And his isolation in the asylum likely intensified his connection with nature, which you can see in the complete absence of other human figures in the scene. It's just him and the night.
There's also that intriguing idea that his medical treatments at the time, or even his possible use of absinthe, might have affected his perception of light and color,
The yellow halos.
potentially contributing to those distinctive yellow halos around the stars. And certainly his emotional state would have played a huge role in his expressive use of color, those intense contrasts reflecting periods of both anguish and perhaps even moments of clarity or heightened perception.
And considering that he painted it during a relatively stable period in his stay at the asylum, it makes you wonder if the Starry Night was a kind of affirmation, a way to capture beauty and hope to hold on to during his ongoing
Like
struggles.
a reminder.
It's like he's saying, even in the darkest night of my mind, there are still stars. What do you take away from considering his mental state in relation to this painting?
It makes the painting feel even more personal and powerful. It's not just a landscape, it's a window into the soul of a man grappling with intense emotions and finding a way to express them through his art.
Exactly. Ultimately, the painting encapsulates the worldview of a man who cherished the simple beauties of the world yet was constantly haunted by illness, finding something sublime and awe-inspiring even in the darkness.
Yeah.
His mental state, both his suffering and his extraordinary sensitivity, were so deeply intertwined with the creation of this enduring masterpiece.
Even though he didn't achieve much fame during his lifetime, Van Gogh's Starry Night went on to have a monumental impact on the development of modern art movement.
Huge impact, yeah.
It became a kind of touchstone for artists who were seeking to express their inner emotions and subjective experiences rather than just depicting the external world.
Absolutely. One of the earliest and most direct impacts was on the Fauves in France and the German Expressionists in the early 20th century.
Okay.
They were incredibly inspired by his bold, non-naturalistic use of color and his passionate, almost frantic technique. When Van Gogh's work was finally exhibited in Paris after his death, it had a profound effect on young artists like Matisse and Kirchner.
Wow.
The Starry Night, with its intense colors and its disregard for how a realistic night sky should look, really opened their eyes to the possibilities of using color to convey feeling. Kirchner even said that Van Gogh taught him how to inject soul into landscape.
Soul into landscape, I like that. And it really became an emblem of the Expressionist movement itself, this core idea that art should be about depicting what the artist feels inside, not just what they see with their eyes.
Exactly. Artists like Edvard Munch, with his iconic painting The Scream,
Yeah.
shared that desire to give visual form to intense emotional experiences. And you can definitely see parallels in their agitated skies and powerful use of line and color.
There is a similarity there.
Later on, the abstract expressionists in New York in the mid-20th century, artists like Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning, greatly admired Van Gogh's energetic brushwork and the directness of his application of paint.
Right, the energy.
They valued spontaneity and the raw expression of the artist's inner state on the canvas, which Van Gogh had already been doing decades earlier in the Starry Night. It's like he paved the way for a whole new way of making art.
It also fundamentally changed the way artists approach the subject of night and nature. Before Van Gogh, night scenes in painting were often much more subdued and atmospheric.
Much darker, quieter.
He showed that the night could be just as vibrant and emotionally charged as the daytime. He gave the darkness a voice, a color, a feeling.
And movements like symbolism and surrealism, which were interested in exploring inner visions and symbolic content, also found a kindred spirit in Van Gogh. His emphasis on the importance of feeling in art, as he expressed in his letters and so powerfully in The Starry Night, became a guiding principle for many artists who wanted to delve into the subconscious and the world of dreams.
It even contributed to the whole idea of the artist as a tortured genius.
Oh, definitely that narrative.
Van Gogh's life story, his struggles, and his intense dedication to his art, despite facing so much hardship, added this romantic and perhaps a bit tragic aura to his work. And The Starry Night, painted while he's in a mental hospital, became this potent symbol of profound beauty emerging from personal pain.
And with its acquisition by the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1941, the Starry Night's status as a truly pivotal work of modern art was cemented,
Big moment for painting.
influencing countless artists and becoming a key part of art education. But its impact extends beyond just the art world, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's influenced design, literature, even popular culture in surprising ways.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the lasting legacy of The Starry Night in popular culture. It has just exploded beyond the traditional art world,
It really has.
becoming this instantly recognizable and deeply beloved image for millions of people, even those who might not know much about art.
You see it absolutely everywhere. It's become a true icon, almost a shorthand for art itself in the public imagination. It's printed on everything imaginable.
And one of the most famous homages has to be Don McLean's song Vincent, also known as Starry Night.
Such a beautiful song.
That song is such a beautiful and evocative tribute to Van Gogh, using imagery directly from the painting and referencing his life and struggles. It really solidified the Starry Night in the popular consciousness as this symbol of the misunderstood but brilliant artist.
The painting often symbolizes the idea of beauty triumphing over tragedy, a narrative that really resonates with people.
Yeah.
And it's been recreated and reinterpreted in every imaginable medium, from intricate mosaics and three-dimensional sculptures to fully animated films like Loving Vincent.
That film was amazing.
It's even been parodied and playfully adapted in pop culture, showing just how universally known and loved it is. You'll see Starry Night mashed up with everything from Star Wars to The Simpsons.
It really acts as an ambassador for Van Gogh's other works and for art in general, sparking curiosity in people who might not otherwise engage with it.
Totally.
It represents this idea of imagination unleashed, whispering to us of beauty, intense emotion, and the vastness of the cosmos.
As we bring our deep dive into Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night to a close, we come back to that endless night sky, which has truly become so much more than just a depiction of a nocturnal view. It's a testament to the power of art to transform personal struggle into something universal and enduring.
It really is a legacy of one man's unique spirit, a gift to the world that continues to resonate and inspire. Those swirling heavens feel almost infinite,
I do.
not just in their cosmic depth, but in the endless ways they continue to spark our imaginations and evoke profound feelings.
Van Gogh himself said, "The sight of the stars makes me dream." And the Starry Night is really the crystallization of that dream on canvas. A dream of connection to something larger than ourselves, of finding a sense of calm within inner turmoil, and of the transformative power of turning sorrow into beauty through art.
It's amazing how the painting can almost transport you, evoke a specific feeling of standing under that vast night sky. It reminds us that art can capture not just how a place looks, but how it truly feels to be present in that moment.
And that endless night sky he painted keeps turning above that quiet little village, carrying our own hopes and questions along with it. Its enduring quality speaks to the timeless nature of his artistic vision.
There's such a profound sense of hope embedded in the Starry Night, even amidst all that swirling energy.
I think so too.
For all its intensity, there's a strange sense of harmony, a reassurance that even in the darkest of nights, there is still light to be found.
Its legacy truly is like an endless sky, spanning across art history, music, literature, and touching the lives of so many people across the globe. It's become a vital part of our shared human culture.
So the next time you find yourself looking up at a starry night, take a moment to think of Vincent's painting. Notice the colors in the darkness, the patterns in what might seem like randomness, and try to feel a connection to that moment over 130 years ago when a troubled artist, gazing out of a barred window, transformed his inner vision into an icon.
In that quiet communion with the night sky, you're also connecting with Van Gogh across time. He's extended a hand through his art, inviting us to see the world with a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
The night sky is endless, and so too is the legacy of love and creativity he left us in those swirling stars.
And the grand silent beauty of the starry night, we find a sense of the eternal, a powerful reassurance that art, much like the stars themselves, endures.